recording now. Today was the boy yahrzeit of my grandfather, Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchok ben Rav Meir. He died very tragically. Before the Second World War, he would travel often to America on business, and his business was he was a shikol meshulach. He wasn't like a major commerce guy, but he was able. He smelled like everybody did that things weren't so good, so he actually arranged papers for his entire family. And before the war, he came back to Europe, came back to Hungary. They lived in Minkach, and he told his wife, "I made papers for everybody. We're going to America." And his wife said, "Tun is kein chas v'shulum to the treif in the Medina mefut nicht megaitish." So he said, "But we must go." So he asked his children, "Who wants to stay here with mommy, and who wants to come with me?" And my grandmother, my mother's mother, was the only child that offered to go with him, and she was saved. And after the war, like right after the war, when they found out what happened to the family, that every single person died, my great grandfather was so tzibrochen that he had a heart attack and died. So he was actually buried in Queens. Tov Shin Daled. What was the year? When was 1945?
That was 1944. Tov Shin Daled.
Tov Shin was 1944. So he died in 1944 when he heard what happened to his family. He died from Agmas Nefesh. My grandmother was left alone in the world, and then she got married, and then that continues her life. But it was a very tragic story. He says the Neshama should have an Aliyah. What's that?
His name was Weiss.
Yeah, his name was Dvach. His name was Yitzchak Yaakov ben Rav Meir. Yeah.
Didn't you make us see him last year, Yosy?
I made a scene because my shver, his yahrzeit is Yom Kippur, so I always make a scene on my shver's yahrzeit. Now, I saw in a beautiful sefer today called Simply Pshat how the Torah talks about Binu Shlosh Dor V'Dor. Yidden need to learn history, and Rebbe Kamenetsky said that from here you know that Yidden have to learn history because that's how we learn how to deal with difficult times. And in the sefer it mentioned a medrash or a sefra that's brought down about Zevulun. So our main job as Jews is to be Mamleches Kohanim V'Goy Kodesh. Our main job as Jews is to spread the gospel, is to spread knowledge of the Rebbeinu Shalom to the world. That is our job. So how does that happen? So we thought that it's Lubavitchers, that's their job, is to go spread to the world, to the nations of the world, the beauty of Yiddishkeit and the truth of the Rebbeinu Shalom. But it's not. The job is to the business people. We think our job is to support the clergy, the kohelim, the light, and the rabbanim, and they got to do the ruchnis. No, that's not what it says in Simply Pshat. Simply Pshat, he quotes this following Rashi. Dover Acher, Amim Har Yikro, referring to Zvulun. Right? It says in the pasuk. Let's look at the pasuk inside. The pasuk says, "Zvulun Amar Shemach Zvulun b'tzeisecha Yisachar b'Elecha Amim Har Yikro." The nations are going to call to the mountain. So this is what it says over here. It's an unbelievable measure. It's Dover Acher Amim Har Yikro Al Yidei Pragmatia Shel Zvulun, through the international business dealings of Zvulun. Tagre Umay Sa'olam Ba'im Al Artoi. It's going to attract business people and big international commerce people. It's going to attract them to visit Israel to come on business. So who I made Al Sapper, he's going to stand there by the border, Zvulun, I think, inviting them in to do business. And they're going to say, since we took the trouble to get all the way to Israel to conduct business, Neilach ad Yerushalayim. We heard there's a lot of hype about this Jerusalem thing and this temple thing. Let's go check it out. V'nira ma'yir asa shalom hazu. Let's see what the God of this nation is. Meaning, since we respect, I assume it means, I'm reading into it, since we respect our business associates, people that we do business with, as honest, upstanding, honorable people, let's go see who they worship. Uma myself. They say, now I know why the Jews charge so much, because half of their money they have to give away to support the Kohelim and the Moistis. and they all eat the same thing. So even though we're earning all the money and they're taking it all away from us, we're giving it to them to support. We all share in the same lifestyle. So they're going to say by the goyim, by the goyim, every god has different rules of how they consume. But by the Jews, everything is uniform. I think I typed it wrong. It means I assume that means that they all bring the same type of karbanos. They all service their God the same way. It's uniform. Mashenkin by the goyim, it's sort of all over the place. And they realized how Jews are fair and Jews share and Jews are honest and their worshiping is consistent. They say and they become geir. This Rashi blew my mind. Why did it blow my mind? Because what's happening now? The biggest enemies of Klal Yisrael are making peace with Jews for one reason, for money. The reason why all the Arabs are now making business ties with Israel, the peace with Israel, is to take advantage of the business opportunities that they offer. And they're speaking highly of Israel. All the people that would curse out Israel are now speaking Bahrain, saying how great Israel is, in Saudi Arabia, it's how great Israel. It's unbelievable. This is mamish happening in front of our eyes. And to add a cherry on the top, Friday was the yahrzeit of Zvulun.
Is that right?
His birthday, and it was his.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
From Torah talks. I know from the internet. How the internet knows, I have no idea. But I know it from the internet. It was his birthday, and it was his yahrzeit. So let's dive into the Avodah Shalom, and let's give ourselves a bracha that we should all be zoichet to the bracha of Zvulun. That means world-class wealth, and with that wealth, we'll attract and make a kiddush Hashem by supporting Torah, by supporting Moistis, by supporting Eden all over the world, and by being honest and showing the goyim that we're different, and through that bringing a kiddush Hashem Shemayim.
Shkoyach, nice word.
So someone tells me, why don't I give you a bracha? We should be like Yisachar. I said, but it's his yahrzeit. We'll talk about Yisachar. Right now, it's Zvulun's yahrzeit, so we can talk about Zvulun. But it was unbelievable that you brought that down. It was mamish hapel vela.
It just worked into the piece.
Mamish did, but
Yeah.
mamish blew my mind.
Rashi's in next week's part. Well, Zesa Bracha doesn't have a Shabbos. It's an orphan. It's an orphan parsha.
That's right.
Although gets laned more than anything else,
Right.
but it doesn't have its own Shabbos.
No, it had today Mincha. That was
Yeah.
the Shabbos.
It'll continue having it, and right through till we'll hear a lot of it on Simchas Torah.
But it's such a profound thing because what you were writing is that our job is to be Melech kind of like a Kodesh. But you made a point. I don't know if that was your main focus, but it created a paradigm shift. It's not about us supporting the clergy to spread Torah. We're driving. It's the people in the business world that are driving the whole drive towards the Gula. It's amazing.
It's a good point.
Turns everything
Good
over on
point.
its head.
You can write a parish on this sefer.
David,
Yeah.
you know, the reason that Zois HaBracha doesn't have a Shabbos, because Zois HaBracha, this is the bracha. We don't need a Shabbos for a bracha.
Okay. Who says that?
Me.
You just gotta plug in. One second. Okay, let's get started. I was just so blown away by it that I have to mention it. Okay, let's see the Halakha Gemara.
How to do something
Okay, so we're
profound
up to
how to do something profound to close the sefer, to end it.
well after that you actually write Shiloh on Yom Tovim. So there's a whole lot
Yeah.
more stuff.
No, but the sefer substantially, as far as parshias are
That was
concerned,
the
are
last
close.
thing.
Yeah.
I was almost blown away by it. Okay, Zok the Halakha Gemara. Hayu Shnayim Mitzvah Moishel Sholzeh. So the v'chulu is what we're focusing on. So the Mishnah had a case where there were three people stuck without being Kohen Shvisa side by side. So each one gets their 4 amma square. There's 2 that are side by side, and then there's 1 in the center. So he overlaps. 2 of his ammas are with A, and 2 of his ammas are with C. I'm going to be using this term today, A, B, and C. So B is the guy in the middle, A is the guy on the left, and C is the guy on the right. So B is in between A and C, and he overlaps. So the halacha is that B is allowed to eat with A, and B is allowed to eat with C, but A and C, since their 4 ammas don't intersect anywhere, they can't eat with each other. And then the Gemara said, Shimon said, what is this comparable to? It's comparable to 3 chatzeros, again A, B, and C, that each have a direct access to Rishus Rabbim, but also have an access to each other. And the A made an error with B, and C made an error with B. But A did not make an error with C. So the Mishnah says, and I'm just going to quote it in the most pashut pshat way, that A is allowed to eat with B, and B is allowed to eat with C, but A cannot eat with C. So it's sort of similar. It has no halachic connection whatsoever to the Shiloh Tchum, but it's similar. You have an A and a B and a C, and B can eat with A, and B can eat with C, and A can eat with C. So that's the connection. Zok the Gemara, Lama Leila Meimar, Lama Davardoin. What exactly is the point of bringing this example when there's really no halachic connection between the Tchumen that overlap and the Eruv Chetzeres that overlap? Zok the Gemara, Hachi Ka'amar Lahu Rab Shimon L'Rabbanan. The reason why Rab Shimon brought this in our Mishnah has nothing to do with our Mishnah, but it has everything to do with the next Mishnah that we're about to learn, that quotes a machloikis between Rab Shimon and the Rabbanon about that halach. Rab Shimon says, and again, I'm just going to deal with the Hava, meaning the Gemara is going to play around with what Rab Shimon actually said. But Rab Shimon said that B can eat with C and B can eat with A, but A can eat with C. The Chachamim argue on it and hold they're not allowed to eat with each other. So Rab Shimon over here says, I don't understand. Michti, Lama Davar Daima. You're not arguing with me. You don't argue with the first Mishnah when the Tchumen overlap, that the guy in the middle can eat with both sides. So that's why Rab Shimon says, Lama Davar Daima, the Mishnah that we just learned, where the Tchumen overlap, and A could eat with B and B can eat with C, it's Daima L'Shalosh Chetzeres, to the case that we actually do have an argument about. Why are you arguing on me in the next Mishnah by the 3 Chetzeres, and you say they cannot intermingle at all? Why is it that you're not arguing on the first Mishnah? They're very similar. The Rabban said, I'll tell you why. When you have 3 Chetzeres, there's many people involved, and they get famished. So we don't want to allow them to even mingle in B, in the middle, because we're afraid some people from A are going to carry into C, and that they're not allowed to do, because there's a lot of people involved. But we're talking about 3 people. In Gunson, there's 3 people in the middle of nowhere. And that's where they're stuck with their 4 ammas. There's no one there to get mixed up. So therefore, we're not concerned about letting A eat with B and C eat with B. And we're not worried that A will eat with C, because there's no confusion there. It's clear cut. Now, but the machlokes of Shimon and the Chachamim is going to be a whole sugya for itself that we're going to get to today. That's a lot more than what we discussed in its simplistic form. So we're just discussing right now that the machlokes of Shimon and the Chachamim is Rab Shimon holds that the only thing that's prohibited is A mixing with C, but A and B can mix and B and C can mix, and the Chachamim hold nothing's allowed. No one's allowed to mix with anybody. That's the most simple shot of the machlokes, but the Gemara is going to have other options. The 2 outer ones, again, by this chotzer, the 2 outer ones cannot mix with each other. So anyone in A cannot carry to C, anyone in C cannot carry to A, but everyone's allowed to carry in B. Why can't A and C mix? If A is now one with B and C is now one with B, so now everyone's one big happy family. So now they're all big one rishus. Why can't everybody carry together? Rabbi Yehuda, I'll tell you why. Because A didn't put their Eruv in B, and C didn't put their Eruv in B. What happened was B put an Eruv in A, and B put an Eruv in C, but no one put an Eruv in A, and therefore they're not considered all joined together, and that's why A and C cannot carry with each other. Rav Sheshes are a different story. Afilu tema shenasnu eruban b'emtsoyis. Even if they did both put their Eruv in B, so both Eruvin are in B, why doesn't it mix everybody together? It's kagoyin shenasnu bishnei batim. B is a chotzer; it has multiple homes, and they didn't place the Eruv in the same home. C put the Eruv in Yankel's house in B, and A put the Eruv in Beryl's house in C in B. So there's two different houses. And if the Eruv is in two different houses, it doesn't work. How do we know that? Kaman ke Beishamai. Beishamai actually holds this, which is going to be a little bit difficult because we don't like using Beishamai, so the Gemara is going to have to get out of this. But the Gemara says, Beishamai Titania, Chamisha Shagabu Es Eruvan. 5 people were in a chutzner, they were making the Eruv chairs together, so they all each guy put in their piece of bread. But they didn't put it all in one basket. They split it into 2 baskets. It's not a good Eruv at all. It can't be split. It has to be all together. So here, speaking, since there are 2 different houses, according to Beishamai, if the Eruv is split, it's not a good Eruv. And that's why A and C cannot connect with each other. Zok the Gemara, even Beis Hillel might agree that if it's in 2 separate houses, it's also not a good Eruv. Why did Beis Hillel argue on Beis Shammai and say that in 2 separate kelim it's still a good Eruv? There's 2 kelim in one house. It's good enough. They're together. In this case, where we're saying that the Eruv are 2 Eruvin, the Eruv from A and the Eruv from C are in 2 different homes. They're completely separated from each other. That's not called an Eruv. An Eruv means bringing everything together. So therefore, even they still would agree that it's not a good Eruv. Okay? Rav Acha Rav Acha Rav Avia commented to Rav Ashi. The Rav Yehuda Kasher or Rav Sheshes Kasher. Rav Yehuda's teretz is going to be a problem, and Rav Yehuda was the one who answered that B put one Eruv in A, one Eruv in C. That's going to be fair. Well, Rav Sheshes Kasher and Rav Sheshes is teretz that are in 2 different houses. That's why it doesn't work. That's also fair. Rav Yehuda Kasher, the Amar Kigoyin Shenosnem Tzoyis Eruva Bezu Ve'Eruva Bezu. Right, that's what Rav Yehuda answered. There's no place where A and C are mixing because the 2 Eruvin that are existing between B and A and B and C, one is in A, one is in C. There's nothing in B. Correct the Gemara, it doesn't matter because what happened? What happened was let's say first B made an Eruv with A. So B took food and put it into A. Now B and A are one. A and B are one entity. They've joined forces. So when B now goes and puts a separate Eruv into C, so he's doing it all together. So he's doing it on behalf of the whole new joint entity of A and B. So Frek Gemara, even the Irva and Tzoyis, once the middle guy connected with C, he now becomes one with C. When he now goes to join with A, he's taking the entire relationship between B and C and he's joining that with A. So if that's the case, why shouldn't it be a good Eruv? And why shouldn't A be able to carry with C? So that's the problem with Rabbi Yehuda's job. And Rabbi Shesh's job is not good because the Eruv are 2 separate homes. It's also kasher. You know why? Because then it should be usher to carry anywhere. To have a kechamisha sheshruin b'chotzer echad. 5 people live in one chotzer. There's 5 homes in one chotzer. And they made an Eruv chatzeres, but only 4 out of the 5 joined. So you know what the halach is? Nobody's allowed to carry in that chotzer because the ownership that the person who wasn't part of an Eruv has in the public area destroys it because it's now a Rosh Hashanah. It's not one big area, it's 2 areas. So therefore, the Asr Adodi would be Asr. So if that's the case, if you want to claim that it's in 2 separate houses and therefore it's not a good Eruv, well, if it's not a good Eruv, not only should it be Asr to carry from A to C, A to B should be a problem, and B to C should be a problem because you have a split Eruv and not everybody is part of the Eruv, and if someone's not part of the Eruv, he ends up sharing the Eruv for everybody else. So Amal Rabashi says, nice kasha, nice try. but your kashas are not shver. Loy le Rav Yehuda kasha, loy le Rav Sheshes kasha. Your kasha is not shver on either one. First of all, let's deal with Rav Yehuda. Le Rav Yehuda kasha, kivan the irvela and tzoyis by the chitzayna, since both outer people were ma'arv with the center one, yet Ushtaim Chitzonis Bahadi Adadi Lo Ervu, but A and C didn't make the Eruv. That's a positive expression. They bedafka don't want. They bedafka don't want. And therefore, A cannot carry the C. Now I want to tell you something. If you live surrounded by families when their kids are always coming in and raiding your backyard and messing up your backyard and jumping on your trampoline, and you come out of the back and you see 30 kids from the neighborhood on your trampoline, you understand why A and C might have not wanted to be ma'arif together, because they want the privacy. They don't want people running through their backyard. So since A and C didn't make this Eruv, they're showing that they don't want Eruv. That's why A cannot carry in C, and C cannot carry in A, but everybody can carry in B. Zok to Gemara, Sheshes Lakasha. And it's not showing up either why it should be also for everybody. Because let's think about this for a second. Let's think about it. If 5 houses live in the chutzner, so the fact that I'm in the chutzner, if I'm not part of Eruv, but I actually live there, it makes perfect sense. I'm ma'akiv everybody else from carrying because I didn't join with everybody. So it's still not one big domain. But if I live in the next chutzner over, well, I don't really live in your chutzner. So since I don't really live in your chutzner, why would you say that my ownership in your chutzner asers? Why are you saying it? Because you made an error with me. Since A made an error with B, so the people of A now have some type of property rights in B, and it's those property rights that you want to suggest should mess up the Eruv, and therefore B can't make the Eruv with C. Doesn't make sense to say that. Because in Amru de Yurin Lahakel, really the people in Chatzar A should be able to cause no problem whatsoever for Chatzar B. They don't live in Chatzar B. But we wanted to be able to create a mechanism where A can carry in B and B can carry in A, so there are abundant metakula that by putting food in there, we'll look at it as if you're part of B, and if we'll look at it as if A is part of B, and B is part of A. But they're not really that way. A doesn't live in B, A lives in A. So Dr. Gemara, just because they allowed you through the mitzvah of Eruv to blend A and B together to allow A to carry there, that doesn't really mean that A lives there in B, that they can cause problems. Their Rabbanan wouldn't say that just because A has access to B, they would aser people to be able to carry in B. They don't live there. Only someone in Chatzar B who wasn't part of the Eruv would be able to aser on all the other inhabitants. But some of Chatzar A, even though for the purpose of kula, because we want to let them carry together, we consider A and B blended, but Lamaisa they're not blended. And the Chachamim didn't say that we consider it blended to be machmer. They only said we'll consider it blended to be mekel to allow you to carry. That's why even though in B has a connection with A and B has a connection with C, it doesn't stir the air, because the Rabbanan don't give the fact that we made an Eruv together the ability for anyone to stare each other. Now we're going to get a little bit complicated understanding of machlokes between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. So before we start this, we're going to refresh our memories one more time as to what the default understanding of the machlokes Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. Reb Shimon says that if the guy in the middle, if B made an Eruv with A and B made an Eruv with C, A is allowed to carry into B, B is allowed to carry into A. B is allowed to carry into C, C is allowed to carry into B. But A may not carry into C. That's what Shimon said. The Chum say everybody's usher. So that's the default understanding, and now we're going to see some alternative understandings. Amar bin Amarav, Zu Divrei Reb Shimon. This halacha that we just said, that A can carry into B, and C can carry into B, and B can carry into A, and B can carry into C, that's Reb Shimon's halacha. Ava Chachamim Omer, Rishus Achas, Mishaneshes L'Shtei Rishuyos, Ava Lo Shtei Rishuyos, Mishaneshes L'Rishus Achas. They hold that you might be able to carry from A into B and from C into B, but you can't carry from B into A or from B into C. And let's see Rashi. Rashi says, the loishna nos nushteen Eruvin be'emtsoyis, loishna emtsoyis Eruvin bezu. It doesn't make a difference how the Eruv was done. If they're placed in B or if they're placed in A and C, doesn't matter. Bezu hi asuri moin, vein mutarni moin. Doesn't make a difference. Bezu hi asuri moin. In both cases, the people from B may not carry into C, and the people from B may not carry into A. But the hein mutar imam, the people from A can carry into B, and the people from C can carry into B. So it's interesting. So it's an Eruv, it's a one-way Eruv. It helps for A to carry into B. It helps for C to carry into B, but people who live in Chatzar B cannot carry into A, nor can they carry into C. Why not? The kalim that are in either A or C, mutaris b'emtzois. You're allowed to carry them into B and back. Why? The ha'chitzaynos lo irvu ela imzu. The outer chatzeris, A and C, have not made any connection or alliance with anyone other than B. The English A is not being pulled into two directions. A is only connected to B. C as well is not being pulled into two directions. It's only connected to B. So therefore, C can carry in and out of B, and A can carry in and out of B. But the Ein Beis Shuris Mishamsos L'Shus Achas, even the Shtei Chitzonos Lo Irvu Yachad Lasas L'Shus Achas El Rishuis Chaluk is saying, since A and C never blended together, and they're two distinct Rishuyos, the Ein Koyach Bimtzois Lishtamish Loy Bezu V'Loy Bezu. Because of that, B cannot carry into A, nor can B carry into C. Why? The Zumoy Shchosalakan. A is pulling B towards A. The Zumoy Shchosalakan, and B is pulling. And C is pulling B towards C. Ushnei biyurin lo yavinula. B cannot be both in A and in C at the same time, so it's split. V'domya ki'ilu himeha chatzor achitzoyne shelo irva v'hade inech chitzoyne lo yisrasa. If I want to carry from B into A, we say I can't. You know why? Because C has some connection to B, which doesn't allow B to connect with C. C has a connection to B, which does not allow B to connect with A, because the koyach that C has in B, because of its Eruv, now makes it a foreign entity, so it cannot connect with A. The Chaynami on the opposite side. If you want to carry into C, the Irva, Nami Bada, if you want to carry from B into C, A, the relationship that B has with A is going to pull it away from C. But if everybody was married together and it's one big happy family, so the way Rav is learning is that according to Reb Shimon, the B can carry into A, and B can carry into C, and A can carry into B, and C can carry into B. But according to the Chachamim, it's only one way. A and C can both carry in and out of B, but B can't carry anywhere, because B has split loyalties, and therefore each side will not allow it to carry with the other side. So that's the machlokes between the Chachamim and Rav. So it's a little different from our simple Havamim, because in our simple Havamim we thought the Chachamim said everything is also. Now we're saying the Chachamim, well, no, you can carry from C to B and back. You can carry from A to B and back. You just can't carry from B to C or from B to A. And both ways is good.
Can you explain again why they allow one way?
Yes, because
only one way.
The halacha is, if one person in the Chatzar did not make an Eruv, his ownership, which is distinct from the blended ownership of all the other people who joined forces, creates a separate rishus. And since there's now two rishuyas in this Chatzar, everyone's also to carry.
So I'm sorry.
So I'm going back to not this case. I'm going back to a regular case where there's one Chatzar and 5 people live in the Chatzar, and 4 of the people made an Eruv Chatzeris together, and one guy didn't join. So in that case, it's also for anybody to carry there, because even though four people joined into one, there's still one guy who's a distinct ownership. He has walking rights in that chutzner. He has property rights in that chutzner, and he's distinct. He's not one partnership with the other four. So therefore, it's still considered a shared chutzner, not a combined chutzner, and therefore it would be usher to carry that chutzner. Why? Because somebody has ownership besides the group ownership. Okay, so based on that, Hanocha, let's look at B and A. Okay, A only has a shutfis with B. So A is completely a communal entity. It's owned with the Eruv by all of the people in A and by all the people in B. So there's no reason why A cannot carry into B and back. But B has a problem because B cannot say that I'm one with A because in B there's some ownership of C. And that ownership of C is going to make B into somewhat a public place, and therefore B cannot carry anywhere out of B. So the fact that C has some ownership in B is just like the fifth guy who didn't contribute to the Eruv. He ruins the whole thing. Why doesn't he ruin it for A? Why could A carry there? Because A is still a complete partnership and no one else has ownership in A because C has no connection to A.
Yeah, but it can only go one way, you said.
That's right.
So why can it only go?
A doesn't have any secondary ownership to mess it up, but B does.
I see.
A is exclusive.
Okay.
B
Gotcha.
has ownership from somebody else who's not
Okay.
connected to A.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Zok to Gemara weiter. It gets more complicated. So Ki Amrita made the Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said this is what Rav told. So Rav made the machlokes that the Chachamim hold it's only one way and Rabbi Shimon holds it two ways. But when I told over to Shmuel, Rav's approach to understanding the machlokes between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim, he said no. Amarli, he told me, Afzu diver Rabbi Shimon. This Chomer that you just mentioned, how Rav understands the Chachamim, that you can only travel one way, that's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon knows you can only travel one way, and not both ways. According to Chachamim, you can't carry at all. So according to Shmuel, it's much more Chomer, because even Rabbi Shimon who's Mekel only allows you to carry one way, not both ways. Now, I'm learning according to there's two pshat in Rashi. I'm learning according to the pshat that Rashi prefers. So let's just review again. There's a machlokes Ameroim, Rav and Shmuel, how to understand a machlokes Tanoim, a machlokes between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim. And there's three levels. Either A, B, and C could be completely mutter. B can carry to A, B can carry to C, and vice versa. That's the most kulidik stance. And that is the sheet of Rabbi Shimon, according to Rav. According to Shmuel, the sheet of Rabbi Shimon is you can only carry one way. A and C can both carry in and out of B, but B cannot carry. So that's the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel as to how to understand Rabbi Shimon. Then there's a machlokes Rav and Shmuel as to how to understand the Chachamim. Rav understands the Chachamim to be like Shmuel understood Shmuel. Shmuel understood Rabbi Shimon, which means Rav understood the Chachamim that they also allow carrying from A to B and from C to B, just not from B to A and from B to C. And the Chachamim, that's how Shmuel learns Rabbi Shimon. And Shmuel learns the Chachamim that it's completely prohibited to carry it off. So those are the two different ways. So what I want to highlight is the Tzarakula. The Tzarakula, Rav is more makel. Because according to Rav, according to Rabbi Shimon, you can carry both ways. According to Shmuel, even according to Rabbi Shimon, who's the most kulidik, you could only carry one way. So that's what I want to highlight because that's going to be relevant to understand the next line. Zog to Gemara, Tanya Kabasi Rabbi Yehuda Liv Shmuel. I'm going to bring a brisa that is going to show support for the fact that even according to Rabbi Shimon who's mekel, the most we allow is from A to B, from C to B, but not from B to A and not from B to C. Because this is what the brisa says. Amar Rab Shimon. Lama Davar Doina. What is this Mishnah of Tchum comparable to? L'sholish chatzeres apsuchos ulazu. The same case that we're talking about. 3 chatzeres that are open to each other. Upsuchos l'shus rabim. The exact case that we're discussing. But here the Brisa makes Rab Shimon's Shita more clear. Irvu shtayim imam tzayis. If A and C each made their own Eruv with B, then listen to the Lashon. Zu mevia mitech boisa voichelas. A can bring food from its house into B and eat it there. V'zu mevia mitech boisa voichelas. And someone from C can take food from their chutzner and bring it into B and eat. And then zu machzeres moishul boisa. A, if it had any leftover food when it was eating in B, it could take its leftover food and carry it back to its house in A. And the people from C who are eating in B can also take their leftover food back. Meaning A can go back and forth to B, and C can go back and forth to B. But notice the Brisa makes no mention about any allowance for B. So it's much from this Brisa that B can't go anywhere. So this would prove Rab Shimon Shita, because it's Rab Shimon talking in this Brisa, this would prove that Rab Shimon holds that the people from B cannot go to A and cannot go to C, which is in fact how Shmuel interpreted what Rab Shimon said. And then the Gemara goes weiter, Shmuel also is consistent with something else that he said. So if you remember, we learned that Shmuel said, Halacha kidivrei hamekel ba'eruv. You're always mekel ba'eruv. So right off the bat, that means Shmuel would pass like Rab Shimon, because between Rab Shimon and the Rabbanan, we know for sure Rab Shimon is the most puladik, right? So we know that Shmuel is going to pass like Rab Shimon. So if we see how Shmuel paskins, we'll know how he interpreted Rab Shimon, because clearly he's passing like Rab Shimon. So let's see what Shmuel paskins. So I want to draw a picture. Actually, we have the picture in the art scroll, second short. So this, instead of it being 3 chatzeres side by side, between A and B there was a mavoi, and between B and C there was a mavoi. Now you know that in order for anybody to be able to carry this mavoi, we need something called shitufei mavuyos. Since the people in B can use this path to go to the Rishus Rabbim, and the people in A can use this path to go to the Rishus Rabbim, this is now public space. So even if these guys made an internal Eruv Chetzeres, and these guys made an internal Eruv Chetzeres, these two guys have to make Shitufei Mevuyos, because they have to create a heter to walk from into this Mobi and carry there. If you notice, they have this Lechi over here, which is also needed between the Rishus Rabbim and the Mobi. But whatever the case is, they need to make Shitufei Mevuyos, and the same thing over here. In order for B to be able to carry in this Mobi and C to carry in this Mobi, they also have to make Shitufei Mevuyos. So it's a similar case to what we were discussing earlier, except the fact that there is a Mobi in between the two Chatzeres instead of direct access from A to B and from B to C. You're going through a Mobi. So what does Shmuel paskin in this case? Shmuel paskin something that's very revealing as to what he held. And he says as follows. A chater that's in between two mavuyos. Irva im shneyen, if B, the center chater, made a shitufei mavuyos with A and with C, because they want to be able to use both corridors, well, guess what? Asura im shneyen. B cannot use either mavi. Now, A can use the mavi, and C can use the mavi, but B cannot. Why not? Because the way Shmuel understood Rab Shimon, who's the Mekel, who he paskins like, is that even though they made that Eruv, unless A and C makes an Eruv together, if only B made an Eruv with A and B made an Eruv with C, B is stuck, because B has dual loyalties, like we said earlier. But A can carry in the Mavi, and C can carry in the Mavi. That's exactly what Shmuel's sheet is. But the Shneim are mutter. Lo Eruvin Shneim, if there's no Eruv done at all, then I Seres al Shneim. Then even A and C cannot carry in the Mavi. because no Eruv was made. But even if an Eruv was made, B can't use it. Only A or C can use it. And now we're getting into another interesting concept. This Chatzar B has access to the Mavi on one side and to the Mavi on the other side. So what if it only used the Mavi between A and B? For some reason, that's where the traffic went. The vast majority of people that went to Rosh Hashanah from Chatzar B did it by using the Mavi on the left, the Mavi between B and A. And they never used to use the path, the Mavi in between B and C. The halacha is without an Eruv, only the path that they normally use is Aser. You know why? Because since they never use that path, we don't look at that path as a communal path between B and C. We'll look at it as if it's exclusive to C. If it's exclusive to C, C doesn't need an Eruv to carry them. But if the people from B would use it, now it's not exclusive anymore, and that would require shitufim of this. So again, by Aser, because now you have two people that are accessing it. The path that's not used by B, mutter would be mutter to C because it's sort of exclusive to C. Now Rabbi Bar Ravuna says an interesting thing. Amar Rabbi Bar Ravuna, Irva im she'ena regila bay. What would happen if B made an Eruv not with A, who they used to share the path, rather B made an Eruv with C, who they didn't even need to make an Eruv with, because they never used the path anyway. But they happen to have made an Eruv with C. I don't know why. So the halacha is Hutter Regila La'atzma. The path, in Irvaim She'ena Regila Boy, if they made an Eruv with the side that they don't normally use, Hutter Regila La'atzma, the side that they used to go with would be mutter to use for the other side. Because by them making an Eruv with C, even though they normally use the path by B, by them making an Eruv, they're sort of removing themselves from the path between them and A. Because they actually combine forces and they join with C. So they're making a strong statement that we're pulling back from our access to the Mavi between us and A. And therefore, that becomes exclusive to A, and A is allowed to carry there without an Eruv. Here's where it gets really interesting. What if A and B used to share the path between A and B? And what happened was A made a Chatzar, Eruv Chatzeres for A alone. They did not include B. Okay, so again, A and B used to normally use the path between A and B, and A went along, made Eruv Chatzeres, and did not include B. And C didn't make an Eruv at all. So if C didn't make an Eruv at all, nobody in C is allowed to carry, because there's no Eruv. In A, there are a lot of carry. A made an Eruv. So let's think a second. If we associate B with A, which it's Regila Boy, they're going to mess up A, because they didn't make Shnufim of wheels. If we associate B with C, it won't mess up C, because C anyway doesn't have an Eruv. So they're not carrying the Shabbos. So look at this unbelievable story. A went along, made an Eruv for themselves, so they wanted to be able to carry. Yet they didn't include B in the Eruv. And C, Lo Eruv, didn't make even an internal Eruv. So nobody in C can carry out of their homes. He Atzma Lo Eruv. And B didn't make any Eruv either. So nobody in B can carry, nobody in C can carry, only people in A can carry. But the problem is A is now messed up because B didn't join with them. Zok the Gemara, a massive chiddush. Halachically, we make believe like B and C are associated. You know why? Because then at least we can salvage A. Because if we consider B together with A, it's going to mess up A. And look what the Gemara uses as Anosah. This is a halachic koifin al midas sedayim. We're not making anybody do anything. We're just saying if we say B is partnered with A, it's going to mess up A. So let's halachically say that B partners with C, so that at least A can carry with their Eruv. That's an interesting shot. Kofen al midas sedaim is a halachic kofen al midas sedaim. You're not forcing anybody to do anything. However, the article brings down from a parish Yonason, I don't know who that is, that it actually means that you would force the people from B not to use the path between B and A. You have to stop them from walking in that path between B and A because then it's going to mess up A. So there's actually a koven al midas sedaim, meaning you don't allow the people from B to walk through A. Okay, that's the end of the subject. Now we're going to get into something much easier. Now it's easy stuff. So you have 4 or 5 people in the chutzner, they all put in a piece of bread, and they put it in one person's apartment. And one guy says, I'm very makbid, I don't want anybody to eat my bread, don't touch my bread. Because technically, even if the Eruv gets mostly eaten up, it's still going to be good with them. Right? As long as the kosher left. But one of the guys is very makbid, don't touch my bread, I want my bread. The law is ein Eruv Eruv. There's such a beautiful Gemara. The Eruv is puzzle. You know why? Ma Shemo. What is it called? Eruv Shemo. We're mixed, we're blended, we're together. If you're so makbid on me, that's the antithesis of what the word Eruv means. Eruv means bringing people together, not pushing people apart. So if you're going to have such a akpada, you can't be part of an Eruv because you're pushing people apart. You're not bringing something together. It's such an interesting concept that it's like a musar de kazach impacts it halachically. We're trying to bring people together, and if it's going to separate people, then that can't be an Eruv.
But this guy's midas daim is makes a problem for everybody in the
Very good. That's right. Very good. It stems why it comes right after midas daim. It fits in good. We have Chanina Amar Eruv Eruv. Nah, it's a good Eruv. El Shenikra Me'antra Verdina. He's just called a Kagi guy. It's a pointless Eruv. No offense to anybody who would be offended by that. It's just a Kagi Eruv, but it's still a good Eruv. Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmuel, another interesting halacha. Hacholik is Eruvin. If you split your Eruv into 2 kelim, you split it in half for some reason. Ein Eruv is not a good Eruv. Now we just learned on Amud Beis that that's the sheet of Beis Shammai. An Eruv in 2 kelim is not a good Eruv. So Frank Gemara, Kaman ki Beis Shammai? Is Shmuel telling us over Beis Shammai's halacha? The Tanya Chamisha Shugava is Eruv in a snu b'shnei kelim. Beis Shammai are in Ein Eruv, we saw in Merezu Eruv, which we learned just before on Amud Beis. Dr. Gemara, no, I feel him in Beis Hillel. If you split your Eruv into 2, even Beis Hillel would be moided. Ad kan like Kami Beis Hillel Hasam. Where did Beis Hillel argue on Beis Shammai and felt even if the Eruv is in 2 baskets, it's still a good Eruv? The problem is you had too much food. It didn't fit into 1 basket, so it overflowed into a second basket. There, Beis Shammai holds it's not a good Eruv, but Beis Hillel holds a good Eruv because it's still 1. But if you separated it on purpose, and you didn't need to, because there was plenty of room in the basket for 1, loy, again, that's not called bringing things together, that's called separation. Why do I need Shmuel to tell me the halacha of hakpada? Because it's not an Eruv, it's not bringing people together. And the same halacha by splitting the Eruv in 2, it's the same concept. Why did he need to tell us this in both cases? So more tricky. Yashmin Hatzam, if it only told us the halacha that if someone's makbid on his Eruv, it's not a good Eruv, I would say we shouldn't have covered it because the guy's makbid. Here, nobody's makbid. They split it into 2 kelim, big deal. The Yashmin Haka, and if Shmuel only told us when they split it, that one is not a good Eruv, I would have said we should have palgam mipla because physically it's separated. Also, even the guy's makbid, even though the guy's makbid, it's still in 1 basket. That's why Shmuel wanted to express in both places that it's not a good Eruv. So I just want to point out about this machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, because we learned 2 things today about this machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai holds if it's in 2 separate kelim, it's not a good Eruv. Beis Hillel holds it is a good Eruv. However, Beis Hillel agrees if it's in 2 separate houses, it's not a good Eruv, which we learned at the top of Amud Beis. And here Beis Hillel tells us is that if you split it into 2 kelim without a need to, that would ruin the Eruv. Then he'd be moed to Beis Shammai. He's only arguing on Beis Shammai if the reason why you have to go to 2 kelim is because you ran out of space. They were at the wine press. They were busy. They were involved in Dvarim Gashmiyim. But nevertheless, they were schmoozing and tumbling and learning while they were by the wine press. I mean, that's the only reason why I can imagine the Gemara needed to tell us where they were standing when they had this discussion. It's to highlight that even though they're busy, it's like the famous story of Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev, who saw a Yid polishing his wheels of his wagon while he's davening. And he said, Arabashim, look at your folk. Even when they're polishing their wheels, they're going to be davening.
They're greasing the wheels.
That's right. So I heard over from Shlomo Lemshin, I might have mentioned it a couple of days ago, but I heard from Shlomo Lemshin, he wanted to bring that concept into contemporary times. So he said, imagine Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev walks into a Bismerish today and sees all the people on their cell phones. What would he say? He'd say, look at the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Jews made a Bismerish even in the train station. So what did they ask? He asked the following kasha. So Rabbi Abba asked Rabbi Yehuda the following kasha. Mi Amar Shmuel. Acholik es Eruv ein Eruv. Did Shmuel really say that if you split an Eruv into two boxes, it's not a good Eruv? But Amar Shmuel, Shmuel said, the house that you put an Eruv in, so let's say you have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Yisachar joined in an Eruv. So they collected bread from Reuven, and from Shimon, and from Levi, and from Yehuda, and they put it into Yisachar's apartment. So the halacha is, Yisachar, who's providing his shelf space to contain the Eruv, he doesn't have to put his bread into the Eruv box. My time, what could possibly be the reason for that halacha? It must be Lav Mishum the Omar, the Kiman the Monach, Bisala Command the Monach Hakadami. It's because Yisachar has plenty of food in his apartment. So he has food in the fridge, he has food in the cabinet. So we'll say his food, whatever it is, it's going to be part of that area. He doesn't have to mamish put it in the basket. So you see here that you can have food in two separate baskets. So how could Shmuel tell me? How could Shmuel tell me that if the Eruv is split up in two baskets is a problem? Clearly from this halacha, since the guy who lives in the house doesn't have to add his bread into the basket, because we assume that anywhere in the house is good enough, you see two baskets is allowed. He said, no, that's not the reason at all. The reason why Yisachar doesn't have to add bread to the basket is because he doesn't need to add bread at all. Yisachar, who's hosting the Eruv, does not have to contribute to the Eruv. You know why? My time in the Chulu HaChadari. That's the whole point is they're all showing that they live in this house. So they all share the house. That's what they're trying to demonstrate. This is my house. I live here. I don't have to put bread in my house to demonstrate that I live here. I live here. So therefore, you don't have a right, you can split an Eruv, because the reason why this was allowed is because the person who's hosting the Eruv does not have to have a chelik in the Eruv at all. Amashmul. How does Eruv work? How does Eruv Chetzeres work? What happens? Is it magic? I put food in someone's house and now all of a sudden we're all one person? So Shmuel says, Eruv Mishum Kinyan. We're actually, the food, the value of the food that we're placing into this apartment actually purchases a financial ownership in that apartment. And since everybody in the entire chutzner now has a financial interest in this apartment, we're all partners in this one apartment, we look at the entire chutzner like it's one Rishus HaYachid. If it's all about being kind of an interest in the land, why do I need to use bread for? Why can't they use $1? So on Erev Shabbos, nobody has extra cash. Everyone's spending all of their money on Shabbos food. Come Shabbos, they're out of money. So where are they going to get money from? So that's why we use bread. Challah, there's plenty of challah available for Shabbos. Money is a different story. Zok Gemara, but heichad the ear of meal lichni. Okay, so that's not the way to do it. But if you use money, why doesn't it work? We know you have to use food, you can't use money. But if it's just a financial interest, why can't they use money? If people see that people do use money, they'll think that that's really the only way you can make the error is with money. And they might have a Shabbos where they don't have money available, and they'll think that that's it, they can't make an error. They won't use pots because they won't even know that you can use pots. They'll think you're supposed to only make it with money, and therefore the Asi Eruv Lichokuru. It's going to end up being Makalkal Eruvin. So they made it the concept that you should only use bread so that we know it can always be done. There'll never be a problem that you won't have available. Rabbi Amar, it has nothing to do with kinyan. It's Erev Mishum Dira. The way it works is like we looked all the way at the beginning of the Masechta. Jews are where their food is. And since we all have food in this apartment, we're all there. My benai, what's the difference between these two approaches? Ikabenayu kli. What if they didn't use cash? They used a vessel. They used a vashta. They used a plate. That's something that is available every Erev Shabbos. People run out of money, but they still have their cutlery. They still have their utensils in their house. So according to Shmuel, who says Erev Mishum Kinyan, you should be able to make an Erev by everybody giving a fork. And they placed a fork in someone's apartment. However, according to Rabbah, who holds it's about food, it's dira, putting a fork in his apartment wouldn't help. Second Akamina is Pachash Mishavapruta. What if you had bread that was less than a Shavapruta? According to Shmuel, that it has a kinyan, it needs to be a Shavapruta. But according to Rabbah, as long as it's Muslim and stays Sudois, it's enough, even if it's not worth anything at all. So that would be another Akamina. If you have bread, Muslim based Sudois, that's not worth a Pruta. According to Rabbah, that would make a good air. According to Shmuel, it wouldn't. And the last Nafkamina is the cotton. If we're trying to affect actually a kinyan, a cotton can't do that for you. But if we're just trying to place food in an apartment, because we all think about our food, there's no reason why a cotton couldn't do it. Amalei Abaye. L'Rabba, Abaye told Rabbah, L'Didach Kasha, according to your shita that it's out Mishum Dira, it's going to be shver. L'Shmuel Kasha, and according to Shmuel that holds Erev Mishum Kinyan is also shver. Because Atanya says, Kamisha Shagobu Seruba, what if 5 people put their Erev together and they made an Erev in a Chatzor? And then they decided, let's join forces with our neighboring Chatzor. So one of the people takes an Erev, takes a piece of bread to contribute to the next Chatzor. So Kishahen Melichin is Eruvin L'Mokam Acher, Echad Moilech L'Kula. One person from these 5 who already joined in this Chatzor can give a piece of bread to put into the Erev Chatzeres for the next Chatzor to join for everybody. Well, let's think about it. Who knew Dikakani? If it's Sulai, he's the only person. He gave a piece of bread. He's kind of some real estate in the next Chatzor. How are they kind of? Who knew the Kadair? By him putting a piece of bread there, Muslim Beis Suda is there, so he's showing that he's living there. The Sulai, but how are these people showing that they live there? Omar Lay, Rabbah said that's not a kasha. Loyla the D kasha, Loyla Shmuel kasha. You know why? Because it's Shlicha is the Kulaka of it. This one person, once he joins forces with them, he's doing it for Shlichos, and then he can do it for everybody. Omar Rabbah, Omar Abchama Bar Guya, Omar Rab, Halachik Rab Shimon, the Halachik like Rab Shimon, which is Rab Shimon is Lakula. We just don't know what Rab Shimon holds, because we don't know if Rab Shimon holds that B can carry into C and B can carry into A, and A can carry into B and C can carry into B, which is the way Rab learned, or is the halacha like Rab Shimon, according to Shmuel, which only allows B and C to carry, only allows A and C to carry into B, but B can't carry into A and C. But since this is Rab talking, when Rab passing like Rab Shimon, I'm sure Rab is passing like his Rab Shimon. But halacha l'maisa, it's not clear. Don't get the Mishnah back. Misha Babadar. A person is walking towards home. He wants to get home for Shabbos, and the Chashvalai, Shabbos came before he had a chance to get home. Now he's 4,000 amas from his house. If he is Kodesh Shvisa where he is, can't get home. He could only get to 2,000 amas from the city. So what he wanted to do is set himself up on air 2,000 amas ahead of where he is, which would be smacking between him and his house. And then, if that's where he's Kodesh Shvisa, he'll be able to get home. He might not make it for the challah, but he might make it for the soup, maybe for the chicken, maybe for the dessert, maybe he'll make it for the shalom zacher, but he'll be able to get there because he'll be able to walk the 4,000 amas on Shabbos. Now he's 4,000 amas from the city, but he knows he's traveled this route before, and he knows at the 2,000 amma mark there's a tree or there's a gate, and he announces, he proclaims from where he is, 4,000 amas away from the city, 2,000 amas away from where he wants to be called Shvisa. He said, Shvisa, I want to set my Shvisa for Shabbos, under that tree. Now, this is a huge chiddush to me, this Mishnah, because I'm on Amaretz, and I always thought there's only two ways to make an Eruv, either by being there yourself or by sending food there. Here we have a new option where I can just say, I want my shvisa to be in that location. It's a new chiddush in how Eruvin works, but that's what the Mishnah says. But here he says shvisa at the top of my shvisa somewhere under the tree. Now a tree can have a canopy of 30 amas, so he's not really being precise as to where he wants to say I'm parked for Shabbos. So the look is lo yomer klum. It's nothing because he wasn't accurate. But if he said shvisazi be'ikroi, if he says I want my shvisa to be at the trunk, where the trunk comes in contact with the ground right there, so he was very specific that he wants to be kodesh shvisa in that specific place, it works. And he's kodesh shvisa 2,000 amas from where he is without placing any food there. And therefore, since he was kodesh shvisa, mahalach mimakom ragla bat ikroi alpay mama, he can walk from where he is 2,000 amas to the trunk of the tree, and then he can continue on the other side. From the ikroi bat beisa alpay mama, nimsa mahalach mishekashech arabos alapamama. He's walking 4,000 amas after it got dark. So 4,000 amas, how long does it take to walk 4,000 amas? I'm just trying to think. It takes a second to walk an amma, so it's 4,000 seconds. What's 4,000 divided by 60? Anybody have a calculator? I'm going to do it on my calculator quickly. Does somebody have a calculator there?
15 minutes, most probably.
4,000 divided by 60 seconds is 66 minutes. Takes about an hour. So he's going to arrive in the middle of the chicken. He's going to get home on time. So the halacha is in any makar or any baki ba'alacha. What if this guy's walking along and he doesn't know of a specific tree, or he doesn't even know about this trick, and he says, "I want to be kodesh shvisa where I am right now." Well, then then he's stuck in his place. What's the chiddush of that? That's normal. You always kodesh shvisa where you are. The chiddush is coming up. Agulos. He has a radius of 2,000 amas. But the Chacham say he is more, he's a square. Merubois, kitavla merubas, like a chessboard. Why does he gain? He gains the corners. Because if you draw a square, if you circumscribe a square around the circle, the four corners of the square give him more area that he wouldn't have with the circle. And they hold, and the Chacham hold, you get all that space. V'zui sha'amru, this is what they said, ha'ani ma'ar v'raglav, an ani could make an Eruv with his feet, meaning an ani doesn't have to use bread, an ani could make an Eruv, even make an Eruv by being there himself. Amr Meir said, anu ein lanu, ela ani. To the contrary, we hold only an ani does not have to use bread, and he can use his feet, but an usher would have to use bread. Rabbi Yudaimer, no, not at all. They never said that you the pass. The whole purpose of pass is an usher who can afford to pay somebody to go out there and put the bread down to become a shvisa. They made that head there. But avada, if an usher wants to become a shvisa by going there, he can do that as well. I'm not explaining the mission the way the Mashkan of the Gemara, but the Gemara will explain exactly what it means when we get there. Zok the Gemara Vakir. My loy Omar Klub. The Mishnah says that if I say I want to be kodesh shvisa under a tree, but I'm not specific as to exactly where, it's nothing. So what does it mean? It's nothing. Omar Rav loy Omar Klub Kolikar. It's as if he's not kodesh shvisa anywhere. He's not kodesh shvisa anywhere. Now, what happens is normally if he would have been kodesh shvisa where he was, he could walk 2,000 amas and he can at least hang out under the tree. But since he said I want to be kodesh shvisa by the tree, he made a declaration that I don't want to be kodesh shvisa where I am. So he wasn't kodesh shvisa where he was because he said I want to be kodesh shvisa there. Now he wasn't kodesh shvisa there because he wasn't specific enough. So he ends up kerech mikam mikam. He's not kodesh shvisa anywhere. So what happens if you're stuck with somewhere and you weren't kodesh shvisa? All you have is dalad amas, and he's stuck in the dalad amas and he can't go anywhere. That's how Rav learns Lo Yamar Klum. Shmuel is a little more lenient. Shmuel Amar Lo Yamar Klum Leveso. It just means that his declaration won't help him get to his house. Aval Tachtav Shal Ilan Machi Ozer. He'll be able to get to underneath the tree. Now, let me explain what the Gemara is about to say. So, what happens over here is this tree might have a radius of 30 amos, and he was situated within 2,000 amos of the end of the tree, which means if he's Kohen Shvisa right over here, he can actually walk all the way to the end of the tree. That's what he can do. And from the end, from the center of the tree to his house is 2,000 amos. Of course, you can't go there. But the halacha is what Shmuel learns is you actually are Kohen Shvisa. Rav holds if I say I want to be Kohen Shvisa somewhere under this tree and I'm not clear, I'm not Kohen Shvisa at all, and I'm stuck over here. Shmuel holds no, you're Kohen Shvisa. The problem is I have a radius of 30 amos, and we're in that radius of 30 amos where you're Kohen Shvisa. We don't know. So let's have a look. let's say he was Kohen Shvisa right over here. Let's say he was Kohen Shvisa right over here on this side of the tree. That means technically he could go the 2,000 amos to his house. But if he was Kohen Shvisa on this side of the tree, he can't go to his house. You know why? Because this side of the tree is more than 2,000 amos away from his house. Because from the center of the tree to his house is 2,000 amos. If he was Kohen Shvisa on this side of the tree, he cannot get to his house on Shabbos. Now, if he was Kohen Shvisa on this side of the tree, right, then he can get to where he was standing on Shabbos, but before Shabbos, but he can't get past it. So what Shmuel holds is because it's a suffix, where underneath the tree he was Kohen Shvisa, we have to be machmer with him no matter what. So therefore, if he wants to head in this direction, we have to assume he was Kohen Shvisa on this side of the tree, so that limits how far he can go. He can go up to where he was standing, but not an inch further. If he wants to go to his house, we have to be machmer that he was Kohen Shvisa on this side of the tree, which would mean he can't get all the way to his house, so be about 30 amos short of his house, because he might be on this edge of the tree, and the house is 2,000 amos in the center of the tree. So basically,
didn't you say before that when you make an Eruv, you have, first of all, a person has Dalet amos around himself.
right.
So if he comes to the end of the tum, and he's standing over there, he still has his Dalet amos.
Correct.
So he has Dalet amos outside of the Eruv.
Correct. But here,
So he has 2,004 amos.
correct. He will have 2,004 amos. The problem is this canopy might be 30 amos. Trees grow very far out from their trunk. Davening in backyard minyanim for so long with trees, I started analyzing trees. You know, what do you do? You look around. So I noticed there was a tree that the tree reached over 50 feet away from the trunk. They really spread very far. So it's possible that he was Kohen Shvisa 50 feet this way from the tree, and therefore he's going to be more than 2,004 amos away from his house.
Why can't he be Kohen Shvisa under the whole canopy as one Shvisa? That sounds like it has just like you're in a house, right? You're not Kohen
I hear your
Shvisa
question, but Shmuel doesn't learn like that, and that's why Shmuel said, although you can walk to the tree and almost to your house, you can't walk further because depending on where you were Kohen Shvisa, that's where your border is, and you don't look at it underneath the tree as if it's in a house where now you have the whole house as your Dalet amos, which is what.
So if that was a house, that tree instead of a tree was a house.
If one of them was a tree house, if it was a house, in fact, he would be okay because no matter where underneath it,
he's not restricted to his Dalet amos.
That's right.
He has the whole house to
That's right.
finish.
Indeed. That's
Same
correct.
thing should apply to the tree.
Okay, I hear it. Let's see what Rashi says. So let me just finish the Gemara. So it says as follows. He can't get to his house. He can get under the tree. The underside of the tree now, under the canopy, is going to end up pulling him in two directions. If he wants to go to the north, we consider his starting point on the south side of the tree. If he wants to go to the south of the tree, then we look at his starting point from the north side of the tree. So let's see what Rashi says. Rashi says, where did Shmuel say his halacha? Going to kol nufoy shel ilan b'soich alpayim b'makam ragel. The entire canopy of the tree is within 2,000 amos. So he could have been anywhere underneath that tree. The chol dalet amos she'ata noisin l'shvisa tachtov, anywhere underneath the tree, any 4 amos, any set of 4 amos that you want to select as having been the place where he's parked for Shabbos, kulam riyusloi. They could be anywhere underneath that tree. Therefore, we don't let him go to his house. The house is exactly 2,000 amos from the trunk. Like it says in our Mishnah. But the problem is, maybe the 4 amos under the tree that he picked were the one closest to where he was standing, which are more than 2,000 amos from his house. There's going to be more than 2,000 amos, because it also includes the extension of the canopy past where the actual trunk comes in contact with the ground. But for sure, he's allowed to go anywhere underneath the canopy of that tree. Any place where you're going to say was where he parked for Shabbos would allow him to walk underneath the whole tree. The width of the canopy, the extension of the canopy, the canopy could be 60 amos, or 30 amos, which is like 60 feet. That'll cause him to be a suffix if he's on what side of the tree is on. He gets pulled into 2 directions. If he wants to consider himself between the trunk and his home, so then he's within 2,000 amos of his home, and he can get to his home on Shabbos. We don't let him do that. We assume that he parked under the tree on the far side. We say, maybe the 4 amos that he picked under the tree would have been the closest 4 amos to where he was standing when he made the declaration. And that's where you count the 2,000 amos. And therefore, towards his house, you count it from the far side of the tree, which would be more than 2,000 amos. And he might be 30 amos away because he's under the canopy 30 amos past the trunk. And if he wants to go back to where he started, if he wanted to go back to where he started, maybe there was a rest area there that he would rather spend Shabbos in rather than under the tree, you don't let him go there either. Maybe he picked the Dalet Amos under the tree that was closest to the house. He does have 2,000 amos from there to where he was standing, but he can't go one step further. Then he can't go any further. At the end of the day, our boss alofim yeshloi mimakam raglo. He does have 4,000 amos from where he's standing when he met Shabbos towards his house. It's at Beisoy, but you only have to deduct. You have to deduct from the 4,000 amos. You got to take away 30 amos, which is the area underneath the tree, because he's not sure on what side of the tree he parked. He's going to end up losing the actual area that the canopy covers, if Neshulei Pirish, because he wasn't specific as to where he wants to park for that Shabbos. So let's stop here. Now tomorrow tomorrow the other wants to learn after chakras. They want it up at the 6:30 slichas, which means we're probably going to end up starting to learn at 7:30, finish by 8:30, and then we'll do another shir at 9 from 9 to 10. So whatever the other wants to connect with. I'll just ask: is anybody going to be connecting to the 7:30 shir, or is everyone going to join at 9?
My minion's at 7:45 tomorrow.
So then you're probably going to join us at 9.
Yeah,
Okay, that means I don't have to Zoom the 7:30 share because we have a problem with where we're going to be tomorrow. Because I can't be in the oldest measures because there'll be davening chakras there while we're learning. So I won't Zoom the 7:30. So Mitzvah at 9 we'll do the Zoom share.
okay.
What
Shkoyach.
chapter? 1948?
Sorry for that Rashi, David. That's such. I'm still blown away by it. I can't get my head around.
It's in next week's, not next week. It's in.
It was there.
Yeah, it's just there, right.
It's
That's great, Rashi. Okay.
I wanted to add something else. So you were trying to write the connection from the end of the Torah to the beginning of the Torah.
That's
The
right.
beginning of the Torah is the Doris that Hashem left.
That's right.
So I also, you probably meant, I thought of an extra twist. And that's why it's so appropriate that we landed Simchas Torah because that's also a cycle. So not
Oh,
only-
right,
you
right.
the end of the beginning
right.
there, and that's how
Good,
we do
good.
that. I think we actually do that connection.
You
What?
could write the parish. I'm telling you, you could do it.
It was mama's geschmack. I really enjoyed it. Skoya.
Okay, it's good.
Yeah, get the hook.
Yossi.
Yes.